Metal Sonic is one of Sonic the Hedgehog's most well-known enemies, having appeared in a number of games and other various media since his debut in Sonic CD. Whether serving as a lackey to Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik, or being the main villain in a 3D game, his main goal is to defeat his organic counterpart and prove himself to be the one true Sonic. That said, despite being built for villainy, there would be rare occasions that he would ally himself with Sonic and his friends, only because either Eggman ordered him to do so, or if Metal Sonic was tampered in some fashion. There was never an instance where the robotic doppelganger would become heroic under his own volition, except in one case within the pages of the Archie Sonic comics. Today we're looking at the one Metal Sonic who was able to switch sides and make amends for his past actions, culminating with him making the ultimate sacrifice, twice. This is the story of Shard, the Metal Sonic who became good. Shard's story begins with him just being Metal Sonic. The original Metal Sonic, in fact, as his debut issue was an adaptation of Sonic CD, although back then the comic called him Mecha Sonic. Quality control wasn't much of a thing in Archie Sonic's early days, and so for the sake of clarity, I will refer to him as Metal Sonic until the appropriate time. Hello, Editor Me here. I'd like to point out that even after Ian Flynn took over the book and drastically improved the quality, this unit will occasionally be referred to as Mecha Sonic, probably to distinguish him from the number of Metal Sonic copies I'll briefly mention later on. I'll still call him Metal Sonic until the appropriate time, especially since at one point Sonic himself was turned into a robot and was given the name Mecha Sonic. Anyway, back to the video. Like in the original Sonic CD, Metal Sonic kidnapped Amy Rose on Robotnik's behalf, though this time from her home instead of on Little Planet. Side note, while Little Planet does exist on Mobius, the adaptation's not set there. Instead, the two levels present, Collision Chaos and Stardust Speedway, exist in their own pocket dimension. When Sonic went to rescue Amy from Robotnik's clutches, Metal Sonic met him at the entrance to Stardust Speedway. Similar to the game, the two would race each other to the end, where the captives were being held. Yes, I said captives, as Robotnik had also kidnapped Tails. All of this would happen while Robotnik utilized a dangerous beam behind them to prevent backtracking. Again, an element straight from the game. Only in the comic it is not Robotnik, but his nephew Snively in disguise. The real Robotnik was busy rigging the arch of the finishing line to smash Sonic the moment he crosses it. Do I even need to say it? Sonic and Metal Sonic were evenly matched, despite the occasional scuffle. Not even Metal Sonic tricking Sonic using holograms and traps could slow the Hedgehog down. Ultimately, what did in Metal Sonic here was his design. He was built to match Sonic's speed, and in order to do so, he utilizes a little jet on his back. But Metal Sonic underestimated his opponent. When approaching the finishing line, Sonic utilized a new trick, the Figure 8 Super Peel-Out move to reach speeds Metal Sonic believed not possible. His attempt to match Sonic's speed caused his legs to melt off due to overheating, and that was it for the robot duplicate. Combined with Robotnik getting crushed by his own trap, it was not a good outing for the villains. Robotnik would quickly recover, and he rebuilt and upgraded Metal Sonic in time for his next appearance, an adaptation of Knuckles' Chaotix. Sonic and his fellow freedom fighters visited the Happy Land amusement park on Angel Island, which turned out to be a Robotnik trap. They were imprisoned in the Hall of Mirrors, with the unfortunate side effect of stripping Knuckles the Echidna of his powers. Knuckles would then gather a group together, the titular Chaotix, in order to fight back. Two members, at least for this outing, were two of Robotnik's former robots, Heavy and Bomb. Originally made to be maintenance robots, Robotnik equipped them with power gems. These mystical objects were not on the same level as the Chaos Emeralds, but they can still do many things like, in the case of Heavy and Bomb, give machines independent thought. The side effect here is, it can give them a conscience in addition to consciousness. Remember this for later. Heavy and Bomb realized Robotnik was evil and left his services, taking his stash of power gems with them. Well, almost all of them. Hint hint. The Chaotix used them to launch a counterattack on Robotnik's amusement park, and that's when the Doctors summoned Metal Sonic to stop them. Even though a different artist worked on this story compared to the Sonic CD adaptation, you can see there have been alterations to Metal Sonic's design. He's more stout, bulkier, and most importantly, his new legs actually touch the ground, as opposed to just dangling there. Metal Sonic's presence in the story also makes sense because this is a game adaptation, and he's the final boss of the original game. Brief side note, the game's setting also takes place on an entirely different island, and not Angel Island like in the comic. Had to sneak this one in somewhere. Even with the upgrades, it was a 7-1 fight in the hero's favor, which ended in Bomb blowing Metal Sonic up. However, Metal Sonic's upgrades also included a power gem, and he used it to grow into what would be later known as Titan Metal Sonic, at least in the comic. In the game, this form was called Metal Sonic Kai. Knuckles used a power gem of his own to grow in size, and the two duke it out. During this, they crashed into the Hall of Mirrors, which freed the Freedom Fighters and restored Knuckles' true powers. And that's how Titan Metal Sonic lost this fight. But it was not the end for the robot. He still possessed the power gem, and he used it to rebuild himself with one thing in mind: vengeance. Instead of going after Knuckles, he'd first focus on the one who originally humiliated him, his organic template. Not long after the Sonic Adventure adaptation, Sonic and his friends were heading home from Station Square when their airship crashed. After it was determined that it was sabotaged, Sonic and Tails scouted the area. That's when the one who sabotaged the airship, Metal Sonic, made his move. When Sonic and Tails briefly split up, Metal Sonic was able to kidnap the latter and imprison him within the active volcano, Mount Mobius. As Sonic searched for his buddy, Metal Sonic made his presence known to him. It's here that we get a full glimpse of the rebuilt robot. Basically, it's like if Dr. Wily from the Megaman universe designed Metal Sonic instead of Robotnik. He even has an arm cannon that not only shoots energy blasts, but other things like a grappling hook and a container. He's also more expressive compared to his previous outings. But the most notable thing about Metal Sonic's new design is that his power gem is now visible on his chest. And it's because of that power gem that Metal Sonic had a clear advantage against Sonic. He could even shoot out energy blasts directly from the gem instead of the arm cannon if he wanted to. Yeah, Sonic definitely didn't stand a chance against the robot. However, rather than ending Sonic right then and there, he decided to play a little game with him. Metal Sonic has rigged Mount Mobius so that it would erupt in roughly 5 minutes. Sonic has that long to head there and save Tails. But Metal Sonic wouldn't make the trip easy. He would ambush Sonic along the way, as well as set up some booby traps. Even though he's following his original Attack Sonic programming, he's clearly toying with the Hedgehog, showing a more sadistic side that wasn't seen previously. This could be the result of the power gem. Remember what I said earlier about it causing a robot to gain independent consciousness? We're seeing it here. Metal Sonic never forgot his humiliating defeat during that race, and he's going to savor every moment of Sonic's suffering. But he underestimated Sonic's determination to rescue Tails, and Metal Sonic also learned why it was a bad idea to have his power gem exposed. Sonic was able to temporarily depower Metal Sonic by hitting the gem with a rock, then he tied him up using one of his own traps. The robot powered up again just after Sonic freed Tails on Mount Mobius. Sonic tried reasoning with Metal Sonic, rightfully assuming he's growing beyond his programming. He used his own experience from his brief time as a robot to tell Metal Sonic that he was able to fight Robotnik's programming and imply that he can do the same as well. Sonic also stated that having all that power is fine, but there's more to life than that, like friends, and the joy of being alive in general. Metal Sonic didn't buy it at first, until he witnessed Tails refusing to leave Sonic, even as the volcano began erupting. Though as a consequence, Sonic and Tails wouldn't be able to escape in time because of the environment working against them. That's when Metal Sonic made his move to make sure the two aren't consumed by the lava, by making sure they can get away in the first place, then holding back the lava long enough so they can actually escape. His supposed final words to Sonic being that the Hedgehog was right. He could be more than his programming. He even made sure Sonic doesn't rescue him by reminding him that he's just a powerful, unfeeling robot. though his actions said otherwise. As Sonic and Tails later theorized, Metal Sonic's change of heart was a combination of Sonic's words and Tails' actions on Mount Mobius. But there was another element they might not have considered: the power gem in Metal Sonic's possession. While it granted him consciousness, it also, eventually, granted him a conscience. Bits of this conscience might have poked through during Metal Sonic's game, but Sonic's words and Tails' actions allowed that conscience to suppress his Robotnik programming and allowed Metal Sonic to experience compassion and sacrifice in his final moments. As an aside, this moment was likely a shout out to Metal Sonic's final moments in the Sonic OVA. Metal Sonic's story here was not over yet. His body might have been destroyed, but miraculously, his power gem survived. Sonic and Tails told everyone about what happened on Mount Mobius, and the Kingdom of Acorn sent their Royal Secret Service to investigate the area. After recovering the power gem from the dried lava, Heavy, who along with Bomb joined the Royal Secret Service, made an amazing discovery. Somehow, Metal Sonic's core programming ended up inside the power gem. In other words, Metal Sonic was now the gem. During Sonic's year in space, long story, his uncle, Sir Charles Hedgehog, was tasked to create a series of Metal Sonic troopers to help defend the kingdom. In order to do so, he utilized Metal Sonic's data from the gem. However, in the long run, the Metal Sonic troopers didn't work out for the kingdom, though it was due to the machinations of a rogue AI. Metal Sonic's gem would remain in storage until another crisis threatened Sonic's home from within. The wizard Ixis Nagus, thanks to circumstances that were in his favor, had successfully initiated a coup and took over the Kingdom of Acorn, which at this point was rebranded as the Republic of Acorn. To combat this new threat, the dethroned Elias Acorn visited Spy Master Harvey who suggested forming a secret team of freedom fighters. One individual who joined this team would be the original Metal Sonic. At Harvey's request, Uncle Chuck assembled a new body for the robot using his power gem and various parts from destroyed Metal Sonics, Metal Sonic Troopers, and a Metal Scourge. Assembly was relatively simple because, as Uncle Chuck noted, as each new part was added to the body, Metal Sonic's auto repair systems kicked in. This is presumably how Metal Sonic originally rebuilt himself after his defeat against Knuckles. Having a power gem definitely has its advantages. Because numerous Metal Sonics were made and destroyed after the Mount Mobius incident, the original Metal Sonic was given the name Shard, for obvious reasons. At least that's what I assumed happened. Shard's new body is reminiscent of both his last one, with the facial expressions, the arm cannon on the left arm, and the power gem on the chest, and the original sleeker design. The biggest change to his design are the colors, black with yellow stripes running throughout his body. In universe, it helped match the aesthetics of the secret freedom fighter costumes. Out of universe, it's a nod to Metal Sonic 3.0 from Sonic Rivals 2. Shard also has a couple of new features, including altering parts of his body for a specific task, the aforementioned auto repair system, and most importantly, having what I like to call an active mode, as indicated by the power gem changing from green to red. There was a brief hint of this mode in Shard's previous body, but it's more prevalent in the new one. Active mode allows Shard to tap more into his power gem while out on the field. There are limits as Shard cannot push himself too hard, and he has to recharge after using this mode. Plus, as Shard is now the gem, this makes him a bit more vulnerable, as someone could just yank out the gem to shut down the body, or worse, destroy the gem to destroy Shard. Shard's first task as a member of the Secret Freedom Fighters was to help defend the city of New Mobotropolis from Dr. Eggman, successor of the original Robotnik. TLDR, Eggman's a Robotnik from a parallel universe who killed his Sonic and came over to the main universe after the original Robotnik died to fight Sonic all over again. Shard's role was to deal with some of the egg slots that were on the ground, and funny enough, another Metal Sonic. Thanks to his creative thinking and the power gem, he easily took out his doppelganger, but not before taking jabs on how the unit was poorly designed. And because the Secret Freedom Fighters were supposed to be secret, no one supposedly knew what Shard did right here. Pin this moment for later. Once the attack was thwarted, the secret freedom fighters turned their attention towards Ixis Naugus, the Wizard King's dealing with a major downside of ruling over a Republic of Acorn as opposed to a Kingdom of Acorn. He's sharing power with council members. Because he wanted absolute control, he planned to cast a massive spell to brainwash them and the citizens into his army for world conquest. To do so, he needed some ingredients, namely the bones of a powerful wizard, Ixis Vale. He sent his apprentice, Geoffrey St. John, who once led the Royal Secret Service by the way, to retrieve them. The council was oblivious to this plot, but knew about St. John going away on business. Uncle Chuck, who just happened to be on the council, informed the secret freedom fighters of this development, and Harvey Who sent Shard, along with Silver the Hedgehog and Larry the Jinx Lynx, after St. John. Shard's ability to track St. John and translate the ancient ruins were invaluable during this assignment. Despite this, the group failed to stop St. John from getting what Naugus needed, though Shard had the foresight to install a tracking device on St. John's hoverboard. The device allowed them to determine Naugus' hiding spot deep under the city. They later rendezvoused with the other half of the team, who were tracking Naugus himself, and ran into some problems of their own. St. John, who's been having second thoughts about his master's plan, discreetly passed along critical information to the secret freedom fighters. Earlier, he was sent to determine if the intruders were done for in the pit. He found the entire group alive, and due to him recognizing Shard's power gem, he got a pretty good idea of the secret freedom fighters' plans and who organized the group in the first place. Yet he didn't rat them out to Naugus. Based on St. John's intel, the secret freedom fighters were able to launch a successful attack against Naugus before he can cast the spell. Shard even had the honor of destroying the ingredients, as well as making sure the team escaped. With Naugus' threat to the city thwarted for the time being, Shard's next mission was to track down a team consisting of members he'd hurt in the past. Sonic formed Team Fighters, along with Tails and Amy Rose, so they can pursue Eggman around the world in an attempt to free the roboticized Sally Acorn. One of their stops was the Echidna homeland of Albion. Its citizens would go bye-bye thanks to this individual right here. But that was not the only problem Team Fighters had to deal with. An old Robotnik weapon known as the Kudzu Hybrid Hydra followed them, and thanks to its ability to assimilate Badnik parts into itself, the Hydra was able to take control of erect Metal Knuckles, and later other parts, to attack Sonic's team. It's here that Shard was able to catch up to them. Of course, he would arrive in style. Even though Shard helped them with the Hydra, Team Fighters did not trust the robot. Considering all the things he did to them in the past, who could blame them? But since the Kudzu Hybrid Hydra was the bigger threat at the time, everyone had to work together to bring it down, especially since it could potentially assimilate Shard. At one point during the conflict, Sonic and Shard had to drag the hybrid along the ground to wear it down. The visuals here, along with the banter between the two, really shows how much more Sonic-like Shard had become. Once the Kudzu's dealt with, Shard explains he's here to aid in Team Fighter's mission by suggesting using the Kudzu's remains to research a way of de-roboticizing Sally, as well as planting a tracking device on the tornado for Silver's benefit. But that's a story for another day. This experience highlights a major downside of being a reformed villain. Not everyone you've wronged in the past will forgive you. The actions of the past cannot be erased. All that can be done going forward is to show those that were wronged that you have changed. Some may come around, some may still have trusting issues, but at the very least, the atoners try not to have the wronged attack them on sight. Shard mostly succeeded when he encountered Team Fighters at Albion. Besides helping with the Kudzu, he showed them that his change was sincere when he powered down from active mode, and he even apologized to Tails for the Mount Mobius incident. But he was still a member of the Secret Freedom Fighters, and had to keep some things hush-hush. That probably didn't win him any trust points with Sonic's team. That said, helping them fight the Kudzu, and giving them a hopeful means to restore Sally to normal, did at least smooth some rough edges. Once business on Albion was finished, they at least parted ways on good terms. The encounter also highlighted Shard's vulnerable side. To put it simply, he's lonely. Turns out Sonic's words and Tails' actions on Mount Mobius affected Shard more than even he realized. What about the Secret Freedom Fighters, you might ask? We saw him working well with the other members, and he even cracked jokes similar to Sonic. Thing is, Sonic and his friends have been together for years and were able to form deep bonds. The Secret Freedom Fighters, by comparison, were practically new and more akin to co-workers doing a job. And beneath Shard's wisecracks is someone who wanted meaningful connections. There was a brief glimpse of this after he helped thwart Nagas' plan when he peered into Sonic's family home. This kind of bond is something he wanted, but could possibly never have. Well, kind of. There was one person he was able to bond with, and his fellow AI Nicole. He spent a lot of time in her digital realm because he's really not ready to face the public as a changed machine. That, and he had a huge crush on her. Nicole understood Shard's dilemma because not long ago, she was temporarily brainwashed by the Iron Queen, and many of the people lost faith in her for a time. She went on to tell Shard that he's better than he thinks he is because he defied Robotnik's programming to become someone better. He would get another chance to prove how right she was, as he has to deal with another consequence of his previous actions. Recall his first fight as a member of the Secret Freedom Fighters. It seems his actions against that Metal Sonic did not go unnoticed after all. Eggman wants the traitor eliminated, so he decided to fight fire with fire. He saved one last power gem and placed it inside a newly built Metal Sonic unit. He even installed the memories of all previous units, as well as give it some creative control and a voice. The new Metal Sonic was able to draw Shard out by attacking Sonic's friend Antoine at the hospital. You can thank a previous Metal Sonic unit for putting him in there in the first place. Shard goaded his brother to a one-on-one fight away from the city and its people. This fight proved to be Shard's toughest yet thanks to Metal Sonic's newfound ability to adapt. No doubt thanks to his power gem and utilizing past memory files. During the fight, Shard detected a spark in Metal Sonic. The same spark he had when he developed his consciousness. Once again, you can thank the power gem. Shard tried to convince him to break free from the Doctor's malicious programming and become a better robot. But Eggman placed safeguards in Metal Sonic to prevent betrayal. Seeing no hope for Metal Sonic, Shard tried to put him down for the sake of everyone. But Metal Sonic didn't make it easy. At one point, he even wrecked Shard's arm cannon. This led to Shard considering the possibility of blowing himself up, again to make sure Metal Sonic does not hurt anyone else. The fight would end due to self-destruction, but not by Shard's hands. Once Metal Sonic has deduced Shard's programming within the power gem, he blew himself up to take out Shard as well. It didn't quite work out as Shard survived the blast. However, he was severely damaged, and even worse, his power gems cracked. He's able to send a message to Nicole to have his team pick him up, and to warn everyone about how dangerous Metal Sonic has become. He also wanted to tell Nicole how he felt about her, but due to Shard shutting down, and the signal breaking up, it didn't go through. We never find out what happens to Shard afterwards, because this event took place on the eve of the Worlds Collide crossover with Mega Man, and then the reboot happened. And unfortunately, Shard did not make it over to the new universe. Perhaps it was because Shard utilized the power gem and the idea was cooked up by writers other than Ian Flynn. Odd, considering that it first appeared in the comic adaptation of Knuckles' Chaotix, and in that game, Metal Sonic was enhanced by a magical object for the final battle. Though the American manual used the term Power Stone instead of Chaos Rings, and that's probably the inspiration for the power gems. But what about the idea of Metal Sonic / Shard turning good? Is that the reason he didn't make it over? Possibly, but take into consideration that that moment took place after the Sonic Adventure adaptation, and that game had a robot that turned against Robotnik. Not to mention all the other robots that have turned against the Doctor. Heck, even Metal Sonic himself turned against Eggman in Sonic Heroes, but he still remained firmly a villain. This leads to a third possible reason why Shard is no longer around. The reboot era of the comics is much closer to the games, and Sega wanted one and only one Metal Sonic, and that he'd remain firmly a villain. Whatever the case, Shard the Metal Sonic is no more. However, in some ways, the spirit of Shard lives on. In the Archie Sonic reboot universe, Gemerald kind of fills Shard's role. They even share a color scheme. Most of you are probably familiar with the character, but for those who aren't, he's a machine that worked for Eggman in Sonic Advance 3. He got wrecked in the end, and was later repaired by Tails, and went on to live with the Rabbit family. Gemerald in the Archie reboot appears to have an attitude similar to Shard, though in universe he could have been emulating Sonic's personality. Gemerald would not retain this personality when the IDW series started up. That said, while Metal Sonic and IDW Sonic will always remain on the side of the villains, the comic does have a robotic Sonic doppelganger that was able to turn good with some words of encouragement from Sonic himself. That would be Mecha Sonic from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And yes, this unit is named Mecha Sonic. Well, technically Mecha Sonic Mark II, but you get what I mean. Mecha Sonic's journey is chronicalized within the IDW Sonic miniseries, Scrapnik Island. I highly recommend checking it out yourself, or you can watch my 4-part spoiler-heavy review. I wonder if writer Daniel Barnes had Shard on the brain when writing this miniseries. The only way to see Shard again proper is through Archie Sonic Comic Online. The thing is though, the people behind this fan continuation operate under the assumption that the comic never went through any legal troubles, and thus no reboot, no Mega Man crossover, and anything building up to it, and they use discarded concepts. That means this Shard will go on a different journey than the official version. It remains to be seen what plans Archie Sonic Online has in store for him. The Atoner is a well-known storytelling device in fiction. From the moment something happens to the villain that makes them realize they've done wrong and want to change, the audience might be curious to see where this goes. Would the former villain relapse, or would they commit themselves to a lifetime of atonement, knowing that they may never get the peace they seek? Shard's atrocities as Metal Sonic might have been relatively small compared to a number of the more popular examples out there, or even some atoners in the Archie Sonic book itself. But they did impact people, and he regretted his actions during that time. You could argue imprisoning Tails in an active volcano did cross a line, but once Shard defied his original programming, his atonement began right away. He knew acceptance would be difficult if not impossible, and yet he still chose to be a hero right until the end. His final fight against the Power Gem Metal Sonic showed how far Shard had come when compared to his past self. Had things not ended up the way they did, could Shard have been accepted by the people as a whole? If you factor in all the other times Robotnik's robots turned against him, as well as a growing support group, I'd say it's possible. To expand on the second factor, Nicole would be the biggest supporter, since she was on her own redemption path. The Secret Freedom Fighters, or at the very least Harvey Who, could put in a good word for him, discreetly of course. And then we have Sonic, Tails, and Amy. After encountering him, they might think Shard has indeed changed, and would have given him a chance. While he met with a tragic fate, Shard went out knowing exactly who he is. A hero willing to put his life on the line for others, just like his organic template, Sonic the Hedgehog.